Hey guys, what is up? This is Austin from the Crypto Gym, and in previous videos we talked about how to connect to MoonChain, how to get some tokens with MoonChain. In this video here I want to talk about actually deploying a contract to the MoonChain network. Now don't worry too much here, we're not going to get too deep into the ins and outs of Solidity. I just want to take a basic contract and work on deploying it to the network.
In my contract.
What contract?
And we're actually going to do this two different ways here. The first way, we're going to use a remix here.
Remix!
A remix is a really good way to kind of get things up and running quickly, easy way to test things. Even in my professional life, I still use remix to debug stuff, still use remix to do some basic quick testing. And then in the second part of the video, we're going to go over to Foundry, which is a little more into the weeds. So first half is remix, second half is going to be Foundry. Now, if you guys aren't familiar with remix here, remix is an online IDE, and they've really done a lot to kind of build this out and do a lot of really cool stuff with remix. And I really do enjoy it, like I said. But what we're going to do is we're going to use one of their built-in contracts here, a very basic contract, and we're going to work to deploy that to the MoonChain testnet. Now, on the left-hand side here, we should have some folders, and inside of folders, we should have contracts. Now, what you guys should have from here is 3 different sample contracts, which have we should have storage, owner, and ballot. And just for the video right now, we're going to do storage. It's a very quintessential smart contract you're going to see here. One of the ones that a lot of students are familiar with here because it's very basic. All that we have is a number. We have a function to store a number on the blockchain, and then a function to retrieve the number as well here. So very basic here. And we're going to work to deploy this on the MoonChain testnet. So what we want to do is go to our MetaMask here or whatever browser extension you're using, and make sure you're connected to the Geneva testnet. Of course, you could use the ZK EVM if you wanted to, but for this video here, we're going to be using the testnet. And if you guys aren't familiar with the testnet or how to add that, be sure to go back and watch my other video. Very easy to do, very simple to do, but just check out that video first. And then of course, if you guys don't have any of the MXC token here, be sure to go back and watch the other video. I'm going to link all of them in the description down below here, but make sure you have some of this token here because this is the native token of the network. This is what's going to be used to pay for gas fees that we can deploy our contract with. So we have the network, we have the token. Now let's go ahead and deploy this contract here. So we're going to take all of this code, we're going to compile it down into bytecode, and we're going to send that in a transaction. So remix makes it actually pretty easy to do all that. It takes a lot of the hard work away for us. All that we're going to do is go to the left hand side here, go down to this little diamond shaped tab right there, deploy and run transactions. Now the next step here, we want to go up to an environment here, and we want to go to injector provider MetaMask. You can see I also have Phantom and I also have Coinbase wallet. That's because I have those browser extensions up here too. Right now I'm just going to be using MetaMask for this video, although if you had a different browser extension, you could probably use that too. I say probably because extensions are always changing, but right now MetaMask is probably the most popular, so that's what we're going to go with for this video. Let's click on MetaMask, and now what we should have here, we should have our account the same as what's in MetaMask. So no longer are they per se made up accounts just for Remix. Now they're actually connected to my MetaMask. I can use Remix as the medium to kind of send transactions through my MetaMask. MetaMask can sign that, and I can send it to the blockchain network. And then for the Geneva testnet, we should also see this chain ID here, 5167004. So we're on the right network, we have the right account here, and now we're also going to make sure that we have the right contract here, because sometimes if you have multiple contracts in the same file, it can pick the wrong one, although right now we just have the one contract here. And we're going to go ahead and hit deploy. Now once we hit that, we should see a little pop-up here with MetaMask, and this is asking us to confirm the transaction here. And if you guys have ever sent a transaction through MetaMask before, maybe you bought some tokens or swapped some tokens through Uniswap or something like that, this should look very similar to you. Again, we want to verify that we're on the Geneva testnet. Probably don't deploy this to the mainnet, you know. And then we can also see some additional information here too. We can see the MXC token, how much it's going to cost us here, the total. We can also see the hex data, and the hex data is basically what we're sending to the network here. This is the transaction that we're sending. In human readable form, it's all this here, and in computer readable form, it's this. Let's go ahead and click confirm. And now that that transaction went through, we should have it right here under the deployed or unpinned contracts tab here. We can drop this down here, and we can see now we can interact with this contract. And now we can also have the contract address from here. We can copy this, we can view it on the Explorer. We can also view it through MetaMask, and that's the cool thing about the blockchain. It is this decentralized database that we can pull information from or send transactions to. So we should see this contract. We should see, if we copy the, let's view on the Block Explorer, which should see this address be the same as if I copy the address from here. Well, we can just look at the first few numbers, or we can even move this over. We can see, you know, F8, FE8AD, FE8 transaction hash. I'm sorry. So that's the transaction hash. The contract itself is going to be the FE8AD. And we can click on this here. We can also see some additional information about the transaction. And we can see the contract details from here. So we have the contract. If we copy this here, we go back to the Explorer and we paste this right here. We can also see, the same information across the board here. So we're verifying this information is correct. We're verifying the contract went through, and this is all good to go here, right? Boom. And if you really wanted to, you could pause the video and find this address from here and view it on the Explorer too if you wanted to. That's the cool thing about the blockchain. It's decentralized. Everyone can access it. Now, just as a little bonus here too, let's also go ahead and interact with this contract. We're going to store a number on the chain, and then we're also going to view it too here. Now, let's do a little magic trick here. Let's do a little guessing game here. Let's do a little betting, if you guys will, here. So what I'm going to do is I want you guys to think of a number. I'm going to take that number, and I'm going to put it into this transaction from here. So we're going to store that number on the network. If I guess the number right here, so we're going to guess it right now. If I guess it right, though, you have to subscribe to this YouTube channel. But however, if I get it wrong, if I don't guess the number correctly, you have to subscribe to this channel. Deal? Okay, cool. So I'm going to guess the number was 57. Did I get it right? Leave your comments down below. Did I get it right? Did I get it right? So let's go ahead and take 57, and let's go ahead and store it on chain here. We can see same thing as before. We're submitting the transaction. We can see very similar to before here, we're submitting a transaction to the network. We can see the fees a little less here because we can see that the information that we're sending to the network is a lot less. We're only modifying one number on the chain rather than deploying the entire contract, right? So of course the fees are going to be a little bit less here. So let's go ahead and confirm the transaction. That is the most glorious sound. That means the transaction went through. So we can see if we go to MetaMask here, we can see that if we go to store, that same function is being called there based off the function signature selector. And if we click on this here, we can see some information about the transaction. Of course, we can view it on the Explorer too. So basically, we're taking that number 57, we're storing it on chain here. And if we wanted to view that number at a later date, if we wanted to retrieve some of that information, we can use this view function here, retrieve. Right, 57 from there. You'll notice too, as a side note here, because I'm only viewing data on the blockchain, I didn't need to submit the transaction here because I'm not spending any gas. I'm just viewing, I'm just pulling information from the blockchain. I'm not updating, I'm not changing the state of the blockchain at all here. So that was step one here. We went through Remix here. We deployed a contract. We even interacted with this contract, and we also saw the contract itself and the details about this contract. In fact, if we even refresh here, we should see the store transaction here too. There we have the store transaction, right? So that's step one there, right? So this is pretty cool here. Remix is an awesome tool to use here, but now let's go a little deeper. Let's go a little further here, and let's work on deploying the same contract just like we did through Remix, but now let's do it through Foundry. And if you guys do any sort of smart contract development, you guys are probably familiar with different testing suites like Truffle, Hardhat, or Foundry too. Personally, I like Foundry the best here. I think that a lot of people are going towards Foundry, so we're going to do Foundry for this video. Now, do know I will be going kind of fast with this here. If you guys are familiar with Visual Studio Code or coding on all your Foundry in general here, this should make some sense here. If this doesn't make sense, that's okay here. Like I said, this isn't just a tutorial on Foundry or Solid development alone. It's just how to take a Foundry contract and deploy it to MoonChain. So you're more than welcome to use Remix here, although I did want to show you a different method too. So we need to initialize our Foundry project, so forge init. And again, there's a ton of good resources on Foundry out there. You should look this up on your own free time, especially if this doesn't make sense. We can go and delete some of these sample files here. So one, I guess technically that is a test file, but And we're going to make a new file under src, which is our source, and we're going to call it storage. If I can type storage.sol. And then we're going to take the same contract that we have on Remix here, and we're going to copy all this here, and we're going to go back to Foundry, and we're going to paste this right here. All right, so same contract. What I also want to do right now is I'm going to make another file here, and I'm just going to call this notes.md. I'm also going to make this a little bigger so you guys can see more. Now I'm going to go ahead and write some notes here just so we have a reference to some of these numbers here, and this way it's a little bit easier for us to manage. So first off, Remix contract address equals, and we can just go here. We can copy this from here, and this will make more sense in a minute. We're just going to go ahead and get a reference to the initial contract that we deployed here, right? And I'm going to show you guys some bonus stuff here too. This is going to get a little into the weeds here, but we're going to have some fun here. And the whole idea with these videos is that we learn, we explore, we get our hands dirty, and this way we learn more about MoonChain and Foundry and Solidity and smart contract development and all that good stuff here. The more you can learn, the better developer you're going to be. Now I can also make an env file. If you guys aren't familiar with env files, be sure to check them out here. It's basically a way to have environment variables in your code and not have to have them hard coded per se. And this way, like, people can't see, you're not putting private keys, let's say, down here in the terminal, or you're not putting contract addresses to make things more kind of messy here. Anyways, I'm going to go .env, I'm going to call this remix address equals just like that. Now, of course, for this one here, I'm going to go ahead and use some different private keys and stuff like that. So I'm not going to show everything in the env file. If you guys need help with the env file, be sure to check that out on your own time. Anyways, in Foundry from here, what I also want to do is I also want to get a reference to the Geneva RPC server. And just like in previous videos here, all I need is the RPC URL here. So we don't want the mainnet here, we want the testnet. I'm going to go ahead and copy this here. And let's go back to our Visual Studio and then paste that right there. And then finally, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put the private key here. This way we can interact, we can deploy the contracts here, and we can interact with them too. So once I paste the private key in here, we'll have the remix address here for the contract that we deployed. Address that needs 2 S's here. We have the Geneva Network RPC, and then we'll have the private key there too. Now we're going to type in source.env, and basically that takes all the variables that were in this env file, and now I can access them in the terminal down here. Now, one of the things I want to do here, even though I know this contract is going to compile properly here, I want to go ahead and make sure it's going to compile. So I'm going to say forge, compile. And that's going to take this file and turn it into bytecode. And it looks like we're good to go from there. Now, to actually deploy the contract here, this is going to be our command from here. We're going to say forge create. So we're going to create the contract on the chain here. So first, we want to specify what contract. In this case here, we're going to the SRC folder, and we're going to say storage. That's the one that we want to deploy from there. Now we're also going to give the RPC that we want to deploy it to, so RPC-URL, and then we're going to use that environment variable that we talked about before, and we're going to put it right here. So we're going to say Geneva RPC. So then we also want to give the private key that we're going to use to deploy this contract with. So -- private -key, and we're going to say the environment variable, so MXC, private key from there. And that's basically it. And then we just go ahead and hit enter. SRC storage contract. I'm sorry, I made one mistake from here. So not just the file name, but also the contract name within the file. So after storage.sol, we're going to say colon, and we'll say storage, because that's the name of our contract within this file from here. Remember, remember, one file can contain multiple smart contracts, so it's important that we specify what contract we actually want to deploy from there. Anyways, back to our terminal, and go ahead and hit enter. We're going to see compiling, just like we saw above here. So we're going to take all this code, we're going to compile it down to bytecode, and then we're going to send the transaction to the network. And then we can see we deployed our contract from here. So our deployer is our wallet that we use to deploy it, right? Same thing as right here. Boom. We can see that we have the deployed to. This is the address that we deployed the contract to. So when I removed my private key here, what I'm also going to do is I'm also going to say Foundry address. And just so I have a reference to this contract address, I'm going to go and paste that right there. And then went ahead and put my private key back in there, of course. So if I copy the transaction hash, or really the contract address here too, right? We can go back to the Explorer, and just like we saw our remix contract from here, we can paste this in here, and then we can see our Foundry contract too. I'm going to get rid of some tabs just so it's a little easier to read here. So this is our one that we deployed with Foundry, and this is our contract that we deployed with Remix. So now we have 2 instances of the same contract. One was with Remix, and one was with Foundry too. Now the cool thing about, again, the blockchain in general is that anybody can access this information, anybody can work with this information from here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull down that number 57 that we did through Remix, and we're going to pull it down through Foundry. So back to Visual Studio Code. So to call a function on a different contract, the command's going to be cast call. We're going to give the address of the contract we deployed through Remix. We're going to call the function, which is retrieve here, and then we're going to give the RPC URL here. Now, if we hit enter, you're going to see that we're not going to get back 57. And this gets into the weeds a little more here. Basically, instead of 57, we're going to get back some hex information. But we kind of technically are. What we're doing is we're getting back 57 in hex form here. So if we copy this here, and if we go to like Google, and if we just go like a hex to decimal converter and we paste in this number from here, we're going to see that we actually do get back 57. It's just in hex form. If you're not familiar with hex, if you're not familiar with any of this stuff here, this gets in the weeds a little bit here, but basically do know that instead of just pulling down raw information, we want to pull back as a uint. 256, just like that there. So we're giving it no arguments here, but we're saying, hey, the information that comes back, go ahead and convert it to a uint 256. And if we hit enter now we do get back 57. So we deployed a contract through Remix, we interacted through the contract through Remix 2. We deployed a contract through Foundry, we interacted with that Remix contract through Foundry. Now let's go ahead and interact with the Foundry contract through Foundry. So we're going to say cast send this time here, because we're actually going to send a transaction. And we're going to say Foundry. I'm going to give it the function we want to call. This time we're going to call store. And we're going to give it a number here. So the argument's going to be a uint256. And let's go and store, instead of 57, let's do 75 this time here. And then we're going to give the RPC URL, RPC dash URL, the Geneva RPC, and then again the private key, MXC private key. Always helps if you don't have typos. Invalid provider. Oh, I'm sorry, 2 dashes right there. Double dash. And then we can see that transaction went through here. And if we wanted to actually interact with this contract in Remix, we can also do that too. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy the address here. I'm actually going to go back to Remix. And what I can do is I can actually kind of connect this contract to a deployed contract already on the network. I'm going to go to load contract from address here. I'm going to paste the new address here, the one from Foundry, and I'm going to load this contract. Just for simplicity, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the contract that we deployed through Remix. I'm going to load this from here. Now, if we read the information, we should have the number 75 coming back here. So we hit retrieve, we see 75. So hopefully that all makes sense here. We learned how to deploy and interact through contracts through Remix, deploy and interact contracts through Foundry, and then we also did some cross stuff there too. We interacted with the Remix contract through Foundry and then vice versa too here. And that goes to show all the contracts we deploy to the network, we can interact with them through different mediums from there. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys have any questions at all, be sure to give me a thumbs up, comment down below, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next video at the Crypto Gym. Take it easy, guys.